spreading. You can say that it's COVID-19, not the virus. This year I'm trending. Let me just kill this track, spill these facts, and I'm on to the next thing. But let's take this thing serious. Please stay safe and don't get infected. Love to the families who've been affected. Spreading.
Greetings to all of you, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of information that the Western Province Baptist Association is putting together to help you through this lockdown. We had a resource that we released a few days ago, probably a week ago now, that dealt with the effect of COVID-19 on our churches. This is the second installment, and this is done under the auspices of the Western Province Baptist Association. And we want to talk about the effect of lockdown, not only on church, but on society in general. And so with me, I've got two guests who are going to speak to the situation, and I'd like to introduce them right now. So to my far right, we have Miss Elaine Holmes. She's an educator for 42 years, now retired, and she'll be sharing some of her thoughts. Please say hello to the camera.
Hi everybody.
And then to my immediate right is Mr. Leon Isaacson. He's a former SAPS detective, but now runs his own immigration and visa agency, and just generally one of the smartest people that I know, and he will be sharing a little bit of his insights and knowledge as well.
Good evening, everybody.
And then I am the host and the anchor for this discussion. I'm Peter Cornelius, chairperson of the Western Province Baptist Association Board and the pastor of Clermont Baptist Church, where we are filming this little interview today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just been declared on lockdown. From where we sit, it takes place in 1 day's time, and many people might be fearful. And we don't want an uninformed fear. In fact, we don't want fear at all. Can you tell us and the audience that's watching, what exactly is a lockdown?
So lockdown is defined in the new regulations which were promulgated yesterday, and this basically confines the population of South Africa, because this lockdown is only dealing with South Africa at the moment, to their residence, and that means that people should effectively stay at home. The question arises about essential services, medical staff, and essential things like foodstuffs and all the things we need to live. Those are exempted, and there's a specific list, and any support services related to essential services are also exempted.
Right. So if we were to reduce this, and by the way, there are great documents that the government has released. You could refer to them, and we'll put them in the comments below a bit later. The need that we have right now is essentially to stay put. Don't leave your house unnecessarily, except to get provisions, except to get medical care, either for yourself or your pets, which I understand is allowed, or except with any other kind of emergency. For instance, your roof falls in or that type of thing. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I think one has to exercise common sense, because this type of situation hasn't occurred. It's probably a 100-year event, the last pandemic of any real scale, and we're not talking about SARS, which is quite localized to China and a few other countries. Was about 100 years ago, when the Spanish flu, after the First World War, apparently conveyed by soldiers, was taken back to their homes, and globally 30 million people died. So probably only your great-grandparents or maybe grandparents might remember that, but most people have no experience or no memory of that. So these are very, very harsh arrangements, and they are there because this particular strain of flu is particularly virulent, meaning it survives easily and it transfers easily, and these are measures to stop the spread effectively.
Great stuff. So, in short, it's for our good and for the national interest.
Yes.
If I could change tact for a moment, Elaine, you've been an educator for 42 years, you've got immense experience in that field. Class management and the management of learners and students must have been one of your top skills, I would assume. I've got a teenager and a preteen in my house. What do I do with them for 3 weeks? How do I control them? Could you speak a word to some parents who are pulling their hair out now already?
I think that this lockdown situation presents a very unique challenge to parents and the children. And I think one of the first things that families need to do is sit down and establish a routine so that children know what is expected of them and parents know that too. So a time for getting up, a time for having meals, a time for exercising, a time for work, and a time for going to bed, I think is essential at this stage. And I would recommend that the whole family discuss this, that it's not an imposed situation on the children at this stage.
Okay, great. So what I'm hearing you saying is that we obviously have a normal rhythm and routine without the threat of COVID-19. But the lockdown now, as a response to the threat, means that we need to develop a new routine. And how important is this new routine? What could happen if we don't have this routine in the home?
I think that it's very easy in an environment that is locked down for tension to rise and for parents to become irritated, and that could cause big problems in the family situation. So I think that we need to work to a situation where parents and children are honest about their feelings. And I think one of the other things we need to do is sit down with our children and discuss the situation of COVID-19. Make sure that they understand the severity of it and the reason for being at home, and the importance that it is for them to follow health routines that have been given to us, washing hands, not hugging, which is going to be very hard in some families. And I certainly think that children need to be given the time where they can express any fears or concerns that they might have.
Great stuff, thank you. I read an attempt to be funny the other day, and I think it is somewhat funny, that we all have the opportunity with this lockdown to save the world by simply watching TV. I have some reservations about that because I don't want my kids to be vegetating in front of Netflix for 20 hours. Could you say something to the proportion of entertainment versus constructive activity? How much does a kid need? What are your thoughts and opinion on that?
I think that this probably falls into the routine that children need to know when their time, once the holiday period is over, how much time is expected of them to do schoolwork, because I think it's important that that routine is carried on, because the longer that a child is out of the classroom, the more they forget academic routines that have been put in place. So I think that there should be a time when children can watch their programs on TV, but there must be a time when they're outside and exercising as well. I think children should be involved in chores in the home and given responsibilities so that the family is working as a unit and not everything gets put onto mom, but that she's able to call on the children. I think it's quite important in discussing mindfulness in the family at this stage and realizing that we're in this together, and if we do lose our tempers, let's apologize and discuss it and talk about it and what has led up to that situation so that we try to avoid that in the future.
Thank you so much. Leon, can I ask just your general insights into the phenomenon that Elaine has been speaking about, cabin fever, claustrophobia, just this feeling that I can't go anywhere and I've got to do the same thing over and over for 3 weeks. A lot of fears associated with that. Any thoughts or any words of encouragement that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think people should use their space. I mean, it's important, I think, when the weather's right to go outside, get fresh air. Vary the activities, as Elaine said, have routines, and maybe it's an opportunity might not be a very popular suggestion, but to do some things around the house, start fixing things that need fixing, and use the time constructively. One of the challenges which I think people have to deal with, particularly with adults, not just with children, and I was sat in on a webinar presented by a labour lawyer today and a psychologist, and they were saying that people need to assess themselves every day so that they actually don't become discouraged. And it was related to individuals and their families, and to actually have exercises which are constructive. So you're not sitting alone in your home talking yourself down because you're in this difficult situation. It's kind of a recipe for depression. And one of the things I've suggested to people online is that they actually use the technology, but don't just chat. I mean, as in finger chat. I think actually pick up the phone and talk to somebody maybe twice a day. Sit down and talk to your friends and encourage them, because they need it and you need it. And just make sure that you're conveying positive things to people throughout this period. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're all in it together, and it's interesting because the whole world is in it together. It's not just South Africans that are in this. It's the whole world. 7 billion people are now have to work their way through this crisis.
If I could just chip in there, Peter. Leon mentioned maybe there are things that need to be fixed. Take that opportunity to show your children how you are fixing those things and teach them skills that they might not otherwise learn. If mum's making bread or baking cookies, get the children into the kitchen and get them to help measure out the ingredients. It's a wonderful way of doing maths.
Yeah, great stuff, thank you. Just one more question on the cabin fever, claustrophobia, limited options phenomenon. Not every family's got a mom and a dad. In fact, there might be people stuck in a flat, single student in Cape Town who hasn't had the chance to go back home possibly. Would any of you like to comment on how does a person alone in a flat or a household or house respond to the next 3 weeks?
I think that there are things that are permissible. So shopping is permissible, but obviously keeping one's distance, sanitizing your hands in the shop, not standing close to people in the queues, and not coughing and spitting and doing all those things that they say you mustn't do. I think people could take slow shopping trips and take in the fresh air, and walk, be outside, take a walk to the shop rather than using your car necessarily, and be constructive about it, be commonsensical about it, and be constructive about it and use your time.
I think their communication is very important too. And sometimes we wait for people to contact us, but I think that it's a good idea to make contact with somebody else who possibly is on their own as well, so that you establish a routine of contacting somebody.
Great stuff, thank you so much. Leon, a question for you. You run your own business, and I suspect that your business has been pretty hard hit by this lockdown and the travel restrictions. You arrange visas for people. Do you have any words of insight, encouragement and advice for other small business people who are suffering because of this lockdown?
It's a very, very difficult situation because it affects everybody equally. Having said that, some businesses are in the essential services sector and the support sector, so they can stay open and continue. And in fact, their business might increase in this period because others have just shut down already because of the warnings. If you're not in the essential services sector, it's a very, very complex situation in terms of labour law, because our labour law does make no provision for this at all. So this labour lawyer and psychologist who were discussing it today, on the labour law side, they were saying that you have to be fair, which we know, but you have to revert to the Constitution for principles. If it's absolutely necessary to cut time, salaries, or cut staff, you have to consult and you have to follow a fair process. And we're trying desperately not to do that. And we've now, and I've, with a couple of people in the company, been forced to take things online that we were not doing online before. So it's been a challenge, and it's actually probably been a good thing. It hasn't altered the staff. It just means we have to say to clients, we can't see you and you can't see us in a consulting situation anymore. So we'll do everything online. We've purchased a license for a particular conference software, which is a little bit better than the general ones in the market. So we're doing that and taking training online. So I think one can try and be as creative as possible. But on a case-by-case basis, I think people just need to keep their heads, whether you're the owner of the company or a staff member, and just face the reality and try and deal with it as compassionately as possible. There are measures in place that the government has put in place to assist individuals and companies. They're also being developed as we speak. They're there in principle. They're not all necessarily active, which could involve compensation. It could involve exemptions, allow people to continue, and it will involve the UIF fund, which has a huge surplus, actually making funds available to cover people for this period of what they would classify as of unemployment. And then there were some donations, which I think are fantastic, from two very wealthy South African businessmen to kickstart a fund. They put in 2 billion rand. That's phenomenal. Plus, they're asking the public to donate where they can, so that the government has enough resources. One of the things we didn't touch on, which is quite important, is that classifying this as a disaster allows government to access funding that they cannot touch unless the disaster is formally declared. So you've gone through this delayed process and different ministers have to do things, but that's a very formal process because the government does keep a lot of money aside for a disaster. How quickly they'll spend it and how quickly people can access it, I think, remains to be seen. But look, I think you've got to face this crisis in the face. You've got to and deal with it as it is. I don't think there's any way to stick your head under the bed and act like it's not there. It's going to affect you. And then the last thing, is because we have now effectively suspended the normal processes of our constitutional democracy through this process. That's what the president's done. He said the normal law doesn't apply. They have now already allowed the banks, for example, to collude to give you a better deal, to actually talk to each other and say, well, how do we get through this? And the banks have been instructed to give people lenient terms on things like car payments, house payments, etc. And it wouldn't be in the bank's interests to go against this because it's a government instruction. It's a high-level instruction, and it affects the terms of their banking license. So that you probably see the banks announcing in the next few days that for the next 4 months at least, because the impact is not just the 21 days, it's after that people have to play catch-up. Probably much easier terms, and I think 1 or 2 banks I've heard today have already done it, so the other banks will follow, which is normal. So, difficult one. Talk to people who have expertise, who are in the know, and just take it step by step.
So it's tough on everybody. It's also very tough on domestic workers and those who are in very low income paying jobs. We live in a country where we have first world standards of living represented, but also many who live in a third world or developing world type of situation. As a pastor and as a Christian, we are encouraging those who have the income to pay their domestics and to pay their workers for those 3 weeks in full. Now, not every person will be able to do that, and of course we will depend on your own integrity and your own honesty and compassion and generosity to put something like that into action. I would think that if you are a Christian business person, or if you are a Christian with significant resources, that you would be predisposed to a suggestion such as this. We do serve a God who is our Jehovah Jireh, He who provides, and therefore that releases us to be compassionate. And so I would encourage everyone who's watching and who can afford to please exercise grace, mercy, generosity and compassion on those that you know that you can assist financially. Please do that. And this is only for your encouragement, but we have done the same, assisting those who cannot, and you are prepared to assist even in the future as the need arises. Any thoughts or comments on that, Elaine?
I think that for me, for the lady who helps me at home to get to me, it means public transport. And I'm just concerned for her travelling in that situation. So I have done that. And I think that as Christians, we need to be showing mercy to those who don't have the resources that we do. So I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anything?
Yes, I agree with you as well. I think in practical terms, people are not going to be able to travel, so they're not going to be able to go to work.
It's a lockdown.
It's a lockdown for them as well.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be able to come and do the work they do to earn their bread. And I would encourage the same, and discuss it with them, explain it to them. There may be slight savings on the fact that they're not using expensive transport, but I think their basic needs should be taken care of, and I think it's an opportunity for the church to witness to people in this situation.
True. And when Leon says the church, we're not just talking about the church as the gathering or the church as the company of people. We're talking about you as an individual as well. And so our church and churches all across the city and the country, hopefully, will be having some type of program of assistance, and that comes from church funds. But when I speak about the church, I'm talking about you as an individual, as part of the body of Christ, exercising extreme generosity and extreme mercy and grace in helping the people that you are fully aware of that need help. And so please take up this call. This is a great opportunity for ministry that goes beyond word service and actually ends up in a true sacrificial giving and service. Closing comments. Elaine, anything of note that you'd like to say before we close off?
I think perhaps to come back to the role of the parents as far as the education of their children is concerned. I think some schools have sent home booklets and ideas of work that can be covered at home. And if you have uncapped access to the internet, there are many educational sites that are allowing children to join free at this point in time. If you don't have that, I think the one thing that every family can do together is to encourage reading. And I know many children struggle with that, but possibly to choose a book as a family and read the book together as a family. And reading is not just reading pages, but to stop and ask the children what they understand from the text, so that we're encouraging comprehension at the same time. So I don't think that the schools are expecting parents to become teachers, but I think that we need to carry on an educational focus in the family.
Yeah, closing comments.
Yeah, I agree with you, Elaine. I think one's got to. This is what it is, and there's no way to talk it up. So I think that you've got to be positive about it. Let the kids feel excited about it. It's like an extended holiday with the structure that Elaine's talking about, and the constructive things that can come out of it. I've had a bit of experience of this because when I was in standard 7, I contracted chicken pox very late. So I spent a whole term of school in bed, isolated from my family and from my school friends. So I actually spent the best part of 2.5 months in my room. And when everybody was out of the house, I was allowed to go and walk around and do stuff. So, and the school obviously didn't want to see me there because I was in the contagious phase. So actually what happened, and it was out of boredom and probably my parents also desperately trying to find something for me to do, I actually ended up reading a book a day. I got up in the morning and I read for 2 or 3 hours until I was tired, and then I slept and I got up and I read. And at the end of that, I'd read stuff that I would never have read if I wasn't at home under those conditions. And it was something that I wouldn't say I enjoyed, but I look back on it and read things that I wouldn't have read if I hadn't, and enjoyed that I wouldn't have if I hadn't had that chicken pox. So I think one can make something positive out of it, and I think kind of maybe make light of it, but in a kind of a constructive way, because 7 billion people are going through it. So you're going to have to do your little bit to make it a positive experience.
Great stuff. And I'd like to conclude by piggybacking on what you just said. Lockdown is an opportunity to reconnect in a very significant way with the people who are theoretically closer to you. And you could take that theory part and turn it into a very realistic part. There are great joys to be found during this time. Great challenges, we know. But there are great joys of relational birthing that could take place. And I would highly recommend that you put your best foot forward during this time. And if you are a brother to siblings, learn to be the best brother that you can be. I'm speaking to my sons. If you are a spouse, a husband or a wife, learn to be the best spouse during these 3 weeks that you can be. And the list goes on. I also want to encourage you to be a good friend. You won't be able to see them physically. But please do pick up the phone, send a WhatsApp message, send an SMS, dial them, have a voice conversation over the phone. And if you know of people who are living on their own or slightly isolated, please do make contact with them. Let's exercise that generosity, that compassion, and that mercy and grace that Christians are supposed to be known for. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. God bless all of you.
Bless the